Okay guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be checking out these needle glow kits. They are for the '03 to '07 GM instrument clusters, but they also work at a couple other things like the Trailblazers and some of the Impalas and stuff that use the same stepper motor. Basically what this is a little circuit board that goes on top of the X27 stepper motor that you can put LEDs on so you can light up the needles. Now this is made by DeviousLSX, which you can find him on Instagram under that title. You can see that on the back of the board there. Hopefully it'll focus. There we go. Now it'll focus. So, yep, that is him. Now that is the same guy that designed this guy right here, the 3D printable bed of nails for doing the EEPROM programming, and this LED jig for bending your LEDs. So all from the same guy. So he's a member of the Facebook group, viewer of the channel, and he sent these in. So I guess we technically have to call this sponsored content because he gave them to me to test out. But I don't know, he's not paying me anything to say anything good about it. I actually think these are a pretty neat product. And yeah, he'll be selling these. So that way, if you want to get them, you can get them from him. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this. This is what it looks like without the underglow. So these are white needles on here, and they just pick up the color from the backlight. So that's what I wanted to show a real quick, just kind of before, and ignore the fact that I forgot to put an LED there, and I haven't sanded this lens yet, well, inlay. So if you use a different color LED, like red for your turn signals, they won't really light up. The camera, since I have it on auto ISO and it's dark, it can see that, but if there's light on in here, you can't actually see those. Those aren't lit up at all. Okay, now just to keep y'all interested, here we're going to take a look at, this is a before and after. So this is with that kit, and this is without it. So that's really going to give you that quick, here's what you're getting out of this. So now you have that underglow there that can light it up to whatever color you want. And I chose white for this video because I think blue goes good with white. But red would also look great on this since I actually toned all of this stuff that way. So maybe we'll put red needles on here in the end. We'll see. We'll see what color this ends up with when I go to sell it. But we got red, white, and blue also could be the theme of this one. For the sake of the video, we'll call this step 1, but really, I would say this is the last step. But this is to help you guys make the decision on if you actually want to do this kind of work early on in the video. So to do this, you actually do have to modify the instrument cluster. So what you do is you're going to take this off, and you're going to drill these holes out. And the reason why is because you got to put that piece of plastic in there to block the light. So this goes in like that. So we got to take a step bit like this and drill out the hole. And so you go from this into that. That's what it comes out as a finished product looking like. And then you're able to insert your light blockers in there. And if you do it just right, they'll just fit in there nice and snug because they're pretty flexible. The type of plastic he's using for these is pretty flexible, so you end up fitting in there nicely. So with your step bit, you're going to go to the step right before the 3/4 if you're using the big fat one like this. I found that to be just right. So the one right before 3/4 can get you to where you have a nice snug fit on there. And you're going to want to take this outside of your office to do this. That way you get the microplastics in the water instead of all over there. So yeah, yeah, this is it's a real big mess. So do this like over a trash can or something. You don't want to actually get those plastics in the water. It's bad for the environment. But if you do it over the trash can, you won't have any problems. It's the dumps problem at that point. But yeah, definitely use a stepper bit. It's nice and easy. You could also use a hole saw bit. I didn't have one small enough. My smallest hole saw was 1.5 inches. So I used a stepper bit. I don't think paddle bits will work with the acrylic. You'd probably crack the acrylic if you tried to use a paddle bit. But hey, if somebody has success doing it with a paddle bit, let us know. While you're at it, you can also sand this. And you'd want to use like a coarse grit, like an 80 grit or something like that, sanding this, and it'll help it diffuse the light more. I did not sand it. I really don't care that much. But yeah, if you take like an 80 grit sandpaper and sand this down, it's going to diffuse light better. Okay, so let's take a look at what you're actually getting here, which this is a circuit board and this is a schematic that I drew on the circuit board. So basically what you have is your voltage in goes across a resistor and then comes down here and is in parallel on all of these LEDs. So that's the drawing of the schematic here. And before you assemble it, you need to solve for what your resistor should. Okay, so to solve that, the equation is voltage S, which is voltage source, so what's coming into VCC, minus voltage F, which is the forwarding voltage of your LED, which is why it's important not to buy your LEDs on Amazon or eBay or some random person that you don't have the data sheet. You're not buying like a King Bright LED off a Mauser. See, that you would have the data sheet, but if you're buying your crap from some random guy on eBay, you don't have a data sheet, so you don't know what you actually have. This is why it's important to buy good LEDs from like Newark, DigiKey, Mauser. King Bright, it's a good brand. You can't go wrong with them, and you'll always have a data sheet. So you look at that data sheet to get what VF is. VS is what's coming out of your car, generally like 14.2 or 14.3 volts is around about what you'd normally be seeing there. I recommend overrating it. In this video, I won't be overrating it, but I would recommend using like 15 or 16 volts as your voltage source for your equation, and then you'll just be overrating your resistor just a hair and underrunning your LEDs. So they'll be getting a little less current, so they won't be quite as bright, but it's not noticeable. That amount's just negligible. You just won't notice it. But yeah, so that's the equation, and so it's you got your voltage source minus voltage F divided by I, so the current draw of your LED. So for this, if you're actually going to put them in parallel, you need to multiply that times the number of LEDs. So I'm only running one LED, so I just need just that. But if you are going to actually put them in parallel, then you do need the full equation here, which is just multiply it by the number of LEDs, and that's IF, so the forwarding impedance. So it's 200 milli, or sorry, not 200, 20 milliamps is for the LED that I'm using. So mine is my VS I'm going to use is 14.3. So let's go ahead and solve for this. All right, so 14.3 minus 3.1 is 11.2. So let's take that and divide 11.2 by 20 milliamps, comes out to 560 ohms is my impedance, which is these resistors right here. So 561. So I'll be running these right at that rated impedance on here. So that's what we're going with. This is actually the wrong package size resistor. It's supposed to be the next size up, but this is what I had on hand, so we're using what I have on hand. They do fit in between here. 2512 is the correct casing for it. The ones that I got are 2010s. The 2010s will fit just barely though, but they do actually reach both sides of the pad. So I'm going to use some 2010s because that's what I have on hand, but 2512 is the correct package. So don't beat me up, guys, for using the wrong package size. I would recommend if you are running in parallel to make sure to stay in that 2512 range, because those generally are rated to 1 watt, while your 2010s, generally the max you get out of them is 3/4 watt. So yeah, that's just something to keep an eye out on there, is to make sure you're within that wattage rating. You don't want your resistor burning up and causing the whole thing. Especially if you're using it too big of a resistor, it's going to get hot and then it's going to heat up everything. So yeah, just make sure you stay in the right resistor size, the right package size. So yeah, try to stay in that 2512 category if you're going to run them in parallel, if you're actually going to have multiple ones on there. I'm just using the one, so I'm fine with this little 3/4 watt running just one. It's not going to be a problem at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and just assemble one of these. So you're going to need a little bit of flux, and I'm just going to put the one LED on here right here. Got a resistor on there, so let's put just the one side. So I got it shifted over so that way we're gonna wet one pad. We're not gonna do both. So a lot of people, that's a common mistake you see people make when they are assembling brand new circuit boards that are blank, is they'll like pre-wet all the pads, but it's way easier if you leave one flat like this and then kind of slide on in there, and you wouldn't have problems if you were using the correct size resistor, but since I'm using the wrong package size, I got to sit there and hold it in place, because that surface tension is going to want to pull it to where it sits properly on the pad, and that's the importance of using the correct resistor on the correct pad size. And that's why you don't make giant pads that will fit everything, making them universal. Like, see how this pad's bigger up here? We're using that for the power plane, so no big deal. But say you use that size pad, scoot it a little bit closer together, and use that for your resistor. When you try to put the one resistor on there, it's still going to pull to the middle of the pad because of surface tension. And so having big pads like that really doesn't help with making multiple things fit on the one thing, because they're really going to try to pull to the center all the time anyways. So I don't know, just a little thought there, a little food for thought on that. Okay, so then we are going to put our LED on here. And the notch is not always the same on them. They don't always point to ground, and they don't always point to positive. They tend to point to positive in my experience, but sometimes they point to ground. So just make sure you read your data sheet that comes with your LED. Mine is pointing to ground on these, but I believe pointing to positive is more common. I don't know. It's supposed to mark which side's the anode, which side's the cathode, but it really depends on manufacturer. They are not standardized for where they point. Oh, had it just perfect, and then when I pulled when I pulled it off, it slid on me. There we go. And then just one of the things you need to be aware of when handling LEDs is you don't want to poke on the surface of them, on the face. That it's really a gel that's kind of got it all assembled there. So when you start poking on it, it doesn't turn out good for it. And the other thing is that gel is semi-permeable, so it lets in moisture. So even when you get like high quality LEDs like these, once you've opened the package and let them sit out for a while, they get moisture inside them, and you really need to bake them before you work with them and get the moisture out, so that way it doesn't damage them. But yeah, that's hand assembling one of them. And when you're just doing 6 for one thing, this isn't this is probably the way to go. It's nice and easy to do. It's just a little bit tedious, but that's all there is to assembling it. You do want to put your wires on it while you have it out too. So next I'm going to show you how to assemble all 5 of these at the exact same time. The biggest problem I'm going to run into here is I'm using the wrong size resistor, the wrong casing size. So they're probably going to tombstone on the hot plate for me, but that's what we're going to use. We're going to use a hot plate to assemble these. Okay, so since I am working with a hot plate, we'll be using solder paste. So wear gloves with solder paste, because it's just little lead balls if you're using leaded solder like I am. And yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with this leaded solder of not being dangerous as long as you're not scraping and chewing on it. This stuff's pretty easy to accidentally ingest, so wear gloves with it. It's my advice here. So you're going to need just a small amount of the solder paste on each one of these. It's a little bit excessive right there. We'll probably end up tombstoning on that one. Alright, so when you're done with the solder paste, kind of pull back on it a little bit, and it'll suck most of it back down in there, and put your cap back on it, because you got to refrigerate this stuff. You don't want it drying out. So yeah, put the the cap back in there to help keep your flux from drying out inside there, and then you just got to refrigerate it so that way it's good to go. All right, so now we have our solder paste on there. Let's go ahead and put our resistors where they're gonna go. Okay, and then we just put our LEDs down as well. Okay, sorry for the weird angle on the hot plate, but let's go ahead and get these on there. Like, resistors are probably going to give me problems just because they're the wrong package size, but LEDs should be just fine on here. All right, and so here's where this really shines, is we can just drop them all on there and watch it happen. All right, so this one's done, and yeah, I can see that the resistor has slidden off to where it's not supposed to be. So yeah, as you can see, since I used the wrong size resistors, you gotta push these around and get them to the right spot so they'll work. Okay, so now here's the part y'all have all probably been wondering since started the project, is how the heck do you attach these things to it? And as you can see, you just screw it in. So these stepper motors have these little holes in it that are for the pick and place machine to put them on. And yeah, that we're just gonna run some M2 screws into that hole. So I'm just using some coarse thread M2 screws. I think these are the 6mm. They're either 4 or 6mm long. I can't remember. I've had these for a while. I actually use them in my DIY gauge pod that I made. So yeah, you just put these 2 screws in right here and right there, and the hole lines up with the hole there, and then that's it. Got the wrong size screwdriver. Let me get the right one for these. I think this one's the right one. Yeah, that's the right one. All right, and then just get it kind of reasonably tight. And yeah, you're just using any kind of machine screw. I mean, not machine. Any coarse threaded screw will work for that. Just has to be that M2 size, kind of small, smaller. Just a little bit smaller there. All right, and then for the wiring, just wire it into the nearby LED that you already wired in. And if you find yourself worrying, oh, this is going to be too much current, just remember that this LED and that is about 1/10 of the current that your original bulb was pulling. So yeah, now you just rinse and repeat. Put all the 7 of them for this instrument cluster because it has trans temp. It'd only be 6 if you don't have trans temp. And that's it. So yeah, no adhesive. These things, if for some reason your stepper motor fails in the future, you can still just unscrew it, replace the stepper motor, and screw it back in, and won't give you any problems. So yeah, these are pretty simple to put in. Just screws right into the original motor. So nothing too complicated there. You just assemble it off the stepper motor because you don't want to be soldering on this stepper motor. You'll probably melt it a little bit if you do. And that's all there is to it. So let me, I'll finish putting these on here, and then I'll show you what this thing looks like all finished. Okay, and this is how it looks complete with all of them having that light. And it's only with one LED on each of these. Now, I did have to actually change the location of the LED itself on all of these motors because I didn't think about the fact that the stepper motors are rotated in these. So these two work perfect the way I had them set up originally. And so then when I just kind of duplicated my setup for these on the rest of them, then realized, oh, yeah, I can't put the LED there because now it's on the bottom side of so the LED would sit here while the needle's here, so there's a shadow across it. So yeah, be aware where you're putting it if you're only going to use one LED like I did. Okay, so when I said I moved the LED, so I originally put them here, and with all of these 4 stepper motors, you really need to put it either here or here. Those 2 locations would be best for these 5 stepper motors, and then for these 2, this location works good. So that's just something to be aware of when you're setting these up, if you're only going to use one LED like I did. But if you're using all 5, or if you're just going to put 3, that you could, it doesn't matter. You just put them wherever. So yeah, it just depends on how you're going to set it up. But yeah, the needle itself does cast a shadow, so you want the LED to be roughly about there, so that way the needle itself can't cast a shadow and cause it to be dim. But yeah, I really like the way these came out, and by the way, see, these are red. Since I sanded it, you can now actually see it. So I sanded it for this one. So this is now finished, and I will probably sell it. And I just wanted to kind of show it off. I think this product that he's come out with is really cool. I think it's a nice, simple way of adding it, and he thought about everything. He added the screw holes in there so you can screw it down instead of gluing it on. I've seen other solutions similar to this where people are just gluing an LED on there, or they're using that tube like he is and just sticking an LED inside the tube and, you know, just hoping it lights it up. So I think this is a good, clean solution to this for people that want to do this. People that are familiar with my work, I don't like doing custom work. I don't like, you know, changing the color of these screens and having to sand stuff and all that. It's just not what I like to do. I like to do the circuit board stuff. So, okay, well, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you liked this, and definitely check out DeviousLSX on Instagram or shoot him an email. I'll have his email down in the description, so that way you can email him if you want to buy a set of these. I don't know the pricing scheme on them. Like I said, I'm sure he's going to sell them in multiple different ways where you can just buy full sheets of them or get them where they're already set up and ready to go. So yeah, definitely reach out to him there. And yeah, like I said earlier in the video, be careful when you're doing LEDs in parallel. So that I would recommend doing it with just the one LED, how I did in this. I really, the only one that I could see using a second LED would be these two. It's not really that these are dimmer than the rest. It's just there's so much, at least this one, there's so much range of it, you're likely to get a little bit of a shadow somewhere. I didn't notice anywhere with a shadow on it myself, but I could definitely, I could see putting 2 LEDs on these two and then just doing the single LED on the rest. And with just the 2 where it's sharing it, I think you'd be okay. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.